This is CBN News Watch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN News Watch. I'm Mark Martin. International observers are warning of a potential bloodbath as Syria prepares to launch a massive military offensive in the northern part of the country. Here with more on this major escalation in the region is CBN's senior international correspondent, George Thomas. George.
It truly is a major escalation, Mark. Residents of Syria's Idlib province took to the streets today, protesting against what many there believe as an impending assault on the region. For weeks, Syrian forces backed by Russian, Iranian and Turkish fighters have encircled the province, which is now the rebels' last stronghold position. In the meantime, leaders of Turkey, Iran and Russia, they met in Tehran to discuss how to limit civilian casualties. You see the three men there standing, talking about the United Nations is warning in the meantime of catastrophic consequences for Idlib's population.
The conflict in Syria has already caused unspeakable suffering to millions of people forced to live under siege or to leave their country. We are deeply concerned about the escalating military action by the Syrian regime and Russia in northwest Syria, with potentially catastrophic humanitarian consequences for civilians.
In the meantime, the United States is warning all parties against any reckless escalation and especially, Mark, the use of chemical weapons.
George, break this down for us a little bit more. Who are the Syrians that are fighting in Idlib?
So here's what we know. There are about 10,000, the United Nations says there are about 10,000 Al-Qaeda fighters today inside of Idlib, along with some about 70,000 Islamic jihadists from various groups, whether they're ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Jamaat al-Nusra, various groups. They control, Mark, close to about 60% of Idlib.
How many civilians are still in the province, and what is their situation?
Yeah, the situation is quite dire. There are about 3.5 million residents who are living in Idlib. Keep in mind, folks, that these are not residents who are originally from Idlib. They were transferred. They were ferried from other rebel strongholds over the last few years and sort of shoved into Idlib. And they are literally surrounded from all sides, and they have no way of getting out of the situation. They are caught in the crossfire.
George, as you mentioned, the leaders of Iran, Turkey, and Russia, they met in Tehran today. What was the outcome of that meeting?
In essence, to try and provide a safe corridor. How do you get these 3.5 million residents out of the province? Also, the intelligence services between these three countries said, listen, let's sit down together and let us go specifically after the 10,000 Al-Qaeda fighters, these other 70,000 Islamic jihadists. Can we share our intelligence to say exactly where these positions are, and let's target them? The Turks came to the table. President Recep Erdogan, the president of Turkey, came to the table saying, listen, hold up, guys, can we create a ceasefire in order to avoid a huge migration of refugees? They are afraid that all these refugees from the Idlib province will head north to the Turkish border. Turkey today already has about 3.5 million Syrian refugees. They do not want another influx of refugees.
There's a lot going on here at home, but is the United States involved in this?
There are about 2,000 troops stationed in Syria, Mark. They're not involved in this particular conflict. They have, like I said, about 2,000 troops stationed in various strategic parts of Syria in their ongoing battle against ISIS. But they're not directly involved in this. But they've spoken out very clearly. Ambassador Nikki Haley at the United Nations, as well as the President of the United States, has spoken directly to the Syrian regime. Be careful.
So what comes next?
Well, boy, if I had $1 million, so that would be the question, right? Many analysts, Mark, talk about, in essence, the major battle. If you thought the last 7 years of this brutal civil war was bad, what experts are saying what comes next is going to be quite dangerous, because, in essence, you've got the Turks, the Russians, the Iranians, who are trying to get the piece of the pie called Syria and what's in it for them after this. And that is going to be something that we at CBN News, we are going to be covering.
We appreciate it. Our senior international correspondent, George Thomas. Thank you, George.
You're most welcome, sir.